Hi there, and welcome to the Web Dev Room. I am Jeff Wood, and today we are working with the new block editor in WordPress, the Gutenberg editor, which is replacing what is now called the Classic editor, much like a new Coke. What is the block editor? It's replacing the Classic editor, the editor you used to use in WordPress. It's not a page builder, though it is heading in that direction. A page builder is a way to build a page where you are dragging elements around to visually build your page in a WYSIWYG fashion. WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get. This is not a true page builder. You can't drag elements all over the place. You can drag them up and down, and you use little arrow icons to move them up and down. But it's not a true page editor. Someday it probably will be. Now, all your old pages are going to stay in classic mode, and if you don't do any editing to them, they're going to be fine. You can convert an entire page at once from the classic mode to the block editor mode. Up until that point, all your content's in one block. So if you convert an entire page from classic to block editor, give yourself time to fine tune the page after you do that. Generally and usually it works out fine, but sometimes your formatting breaks and you'll need to fine tune the page before it looks nice to those end users out there. Your content in a block editor goes into different kinds of blocks. The more common ones: heading blocks, paragraph blocks, image blocks, list blocks, separators, which is the horizontal rule that's so often used in web pages, columns, and then one of my favorites, the media plus text, which was a difficult needle to thread in the classic block editor, is to have media or an image on one side and then text on the other. Because the formatting would often break depending if you were in laptop mode, desktop mode or tablet mode or cell phone mode. So the media plus text block works really, really well in the new block editor. In general, it's a really versatile set of tools, and there are a ton of blocks beyond the ones I've already mentioned. And we'll see them in just a second. And you just sort of fit them together, build your page. I like to think of it as Lego, where you're just kind of clicking the elements together to build your page. You can also have reusable blocks. So if you have a block that you use often, say it's your contact information or a set of links you use a lot, you can reuse it by simply labeling it as a reusable block, and then rather than having to rebuild that block every time you need it, you can simply pull in that pre-existing content from your reusable block. So it creates a very easy way to reuse content over and over again. How to switch existing pages to the block editor. Again, you don't need to do this, but if you're editing your page in any detail, you're going to have to do this. Pages will stay in classic mode until you switch them. In the upper toolbar, you'll see this little icon right here, the little keyboard that tells you you're in classic mode. You can convert the entire page to block editor using the three little dots, the setting dots in the upper left-hand corner toolbar, and choose Convert to Blocks. As I said before, generally it converts well, but give yourself some cleanup time in case you have to reformat it to make everything look nice. You can't convert from block back to classic, so once you've made that convert to blocks, you're sort of committed to the process. You can, however, create new classic blocks. So one of the block options in the new block editor is a classic block, and then simply reinsert your content into them that way. We'll jump into the actual workspace in just a second. Real quickly though, there's two basic elements to manipulating your document, your page. You have this toolbar in the upper left-hand corner. It's going to morph into a tool to manipulate whatever type of block you've currently selected. And as we saw before, these three dots to the right are the settings for blocks. You can add new blocks here, duplicate and remove blocks, make reusable blocks, and so on. Now, the other main piece of equipment here on the workspace is this pane on the right, and we see an example of it here. You have two tabs in this pane, the Document tab and the Block tab. You can turn the entire thing off with this gear icon. So if you click the gear icon, your pane will disappear. If you click the gear icon again, the pane will reappear. So it's just a toggle to allow you to open the settings pane. The Documents tab are settings that apply to the entire document. So things like when do you want to publish it? Do you want to publish it publicly or password protected and so on? And then the block tab are the settings to us, whatever specific block you've chosen. So in this case, we can see it's a paragraph block, and you can do things like add a drop cap, change your font size, change the color of the text, and so on. Now, finally, in the upper right here, there are 3 dots for settings. So there's 2 sets of 3 dots. There's the 3 dots by the toolbar in the upper left, and then there are the 3 dots by the pane in the upper right. And these allow you to work with the settings for your document space, your workspace. Working with the top toolbar is versus Spotlight or full screen mode, visual versus code editor, and other things we'll see. So let's go ahead and switch over to our WordPress block editor and see how this works. Here we have our title block. We'll talk about this a little bit more in just a second. I'm going to add a quick block so we can see these tools in action a little more. So I'm going to quickly go to my cheat sheet here. I'm going to grab a paragraph, Control+C to copy. I'll minimize my cheat sheet, and I'm clicking down here, and this block is already here by default, and by default is a paragraph block. So I'll paste in my text, and then we'll start talking about the toolbar in the pane. So I have a text block, a paragraph block selected here, and in the upper left-hand corner is the toolbar. I can add new blocks using this toolbar. There are a ton of other ways to add blocks. We'll talk about those in just a second. But this add block icon allows you to grab any one of a huge number of blocks. Here's your undo and redo buttons. Info gives you basic metrics about your page. This block navigation, once you have your page complete, allows you to quickly move from block to block in your page as you're editing. You have alignment over here. You have bold, italics, and links here, and then a short pull down, a small pull down that allows you to add code, inline images, or a strike through. And then finally, you have the 3 dots here on the settings, not to be confused with the 3 dots over here. These 3 dots allow you to duplicate blocks, insert another block before or after the chosen one, edit this as HTML, which we'll get to in a second, or add it to reusable blocks. You can also remove the block using this as well. So that's the upper toolbar, and again, depending on the kind of block you have selected in your document, this toolbar will morph to help you manipulate that block. The other main element of the workspace is the pane over here. You toggle it on and off using the little gear icon. The settings dots are up here in the upper right, and from here you can change from top toolbar to spotlight to full screen. Let me quickly show you what this looks like. I like having my toolbar always here in the upper left-hand corner. But if I turn off toolbar, top toolbar, and turn on spotlight mode, I'm also going to turn off full screen mode, notice that many of my tools now show up directly over the block. And this is sort of what it was like in the classic editor. So some of my tools, a few of my tools, are still up here in the upper left, notably the add block tool, but most of my tools have moved over here to just above the content block. I'm going to change this back to top toolbar because that's how I like to work with it, and we'll continue. Other things I can do here is go from visual to code editor, work with Yoast. I can manage all my reusable blocks here, or I can copy all my content, which is particularly useful if you are reformatting a page. The pane itself has 2 tabs, document tab and block tab. Document tab allows you to choose various aspects about the document. If you want your visibility to be public, private, or password protected, the date you want to publish it as opposed to right now, and then who the author is going to be. Your permalink is right here. We'll talk about this more when we talk about our title block. And then we can set our featured image down here. Featured images allow you, when you're posting to social media or somebody is posting your page to social media, that your that image will show up in the social media and will trump, say, the first image on your page, which by default is what is going to show up on social media. And then just like in the olden days in the classic editor, you can allow or not allow comments, have a template for your page, and a parent page for your page. So let's continue. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. So here's the title block. This is going to be the name of your page as well. Previously in the classic editor, the name of your page, meaning the what you see when you're looking at your list of pages, and the title of the page, meaning what the end user sees when they first look at their page, could be two different things. That's no longer true. Whatever you put into that content block, title block, will be both the name of your page and the title of your page. If you hover over the block, you'll see the permalink right here, and you can edit the last bit of your permalink. It's called the slug. It's essentially based on the title of your page. They put dashes between the words and they take away all the articles. And you want the words in your permalink to line up well with your title, your keywords, and your content. Now, if you've chosen a good title, meaning a title that accurately describes the content of your page, you should be good to go. But you can edit that permalink so it aligns better with your keywords and your content if you would like to. So very quickly, let's go back to our page. Here is our title block. My permalink is right up here. And if I click edit, I can edit this slug, the last bit of the URL. So if I wanted to add in the word WordPress to let that end user know that this is a WordPress content box that we're talking about, and to have it line up a little better with the content of our page and the keywords, I can add the word WordPress here. I can also do that down here in the UR slug. So we'll go ahead and continue. I'm going to go back to our slideshow. Adding, changing, and moving blocks. There's a ton of places to add a block. We already looked at the upper left-hand corner of the page where you've got that little plus icon. You can select a block or hover over a block, and you'll see that plus icon appear above and below the blocks. You can also add a block that way. The three dots to the right allow you to add a block. And then you can also hit enter at the end of a block's content, and it'll automatically bring you to a new block. Similarly, if you are cutting and pasting in text and that text has paragraph breaks, each one of those paragraphs will go into its own paragraph block. To change the type of block, and this is quite cool, there's an icon right here, and it's not going to allow you to change to any other type of block, but it will allow you to change into any other type of block that is compatible with the existing content in that block. And we'll look at this in just a second, but in this case with a image block, it's allowing you to change that to a cover image, a media and text block, a gallery, image gallery, or a file. Now to change the type of block, you simply click that and choose the type of transformation you want to make. To move a block, you hover over it and you'll see this icon on the left. That 6-dot grid allows you to drag a block up and down, though you can't change its place horizontally on the page. You can also use these arrows to move it up and down one block at a time. So let's see what that looks like. I'll add a second block. So again, there's a million ways to add blocks. This time we will insert after. So this is giving me, by default, it's going to be a paragraph block or a text block. I'm going to put in the same text. And the main reason I'm doing that is so I can then select this one. I could drag this below the existing one, or I can move them up using these arrows. So the arrows and the little drag grid allows you to move this content up and down. Let's keep going. I'll go back to my PowerPoint. So types of block, there are a ton to choose from, enough so that using the search box at the top is going to make your life a lot easier once you're used to them. Really quickly, in the common section, headings, paragraphs, images, image galleries, pull quotes, pulling in files, the media plus text, which I talked about before, lists, meaning regular bulleted lists, and then a separator, which is the horizontal rule we've probably all seen before. Formatting blocks include custom HTML, which we'll deal with at the very end of this tutorial, pull quotes, as I mentioned before, tables, which were hard to do in Classic Editor without using the Table Press plugin, but which are easier now, the verse block, which saves your original formatting, pre-formatted code, and classic. And the classic is the one I mentioned before. If you can revert to the old style of Classic Editor, a block at a time, and put your content in that way. You have layout blocks, columns. Columns are much easier now in WordPress than they used to be, and we'll show you how to do those today, excuse me. Separators, more, which is the read more option, the media plus text thing I've mentioned several times. You can add buttons, you can add spacers, which are simply just white space, and you can control the amount of white space in that block. You can add widgets from your own widget page. You have embeds from most media platforms, and I mentioned before we have reusable blocks. So if you have a piece of content you use a lot, you can simply label it with a unique label and pull in that block whenever you need it. So here are all the blocks I'm going to now build. I don't need to go through these all at once. So I will simply go to our page and we'll begin. The title block, we've already covered. The text block, since we're already here, let's show you how to work with this. The tools over here are fairly obvious. Your alignment tools, bold, italics, and a link. Here is the transform tool. So with this one selected, if I click this, it shows me the type of blocks I can transform to that will be compatible with the existing content. So heading, list, a pull quote box, pre-formatted, and verse. Let's add one more thing. Over here in the pane, I can do a few other things with this content. I can change my font size either by using words such as normal, medium, large, or an actual point size right here. I can add a drop cap if I like. I can change the color of both my background and my text from here as well. Let's add a cover block next. This time I'll hover over the my first block below my title, and I'll click add block. So that's yet another way to add a block. This time we're going to choose cover. So I'm using the search bar here to choose cover. And you can upload it directly. Personally, I think if you're ever going to upload any images or any files for that matter, use the media library so you can reuse them or revisit them rather than a direct upload. So I'm going to go to the media library. I'm going to choose this image, which represents WordPress blocks. I'll click select. So this is a cover block. This is useful for the beginnings of a page, the top of a page, the graphic header of a page, if you will. So content, spell it correctly here. This is what a cover block looks like. If I go over to the pane here and click block, I can change the horizontal positioning, and notice that my content blocks move as I work with this. I can't change vertical positioning because it is the entirety of the size, or the height of my graphic here. I can also change the focal point using this right here. And I can change overlay backgrounds, background opacity, and so on. Now, if I want this just to be a simple image, I can select it again, go to my transform tool, and just change it to an image. And we'll see now that there's no longer any heading, and it shows us the entire image. I think we'll keep this and continue. Let's work with the media and text block next. So I'll simply click Add Block, and I'll type in ME and get the media and text block. So my visual content goes here, and my textual content goes over here. I can use this set of icons to change that around. I'll go to my media library, and I'll choose this screenshot of the eStore, and I'll simply put eStore dashboard. So here is our visual side of the media plus text, and the text side. I can change the size of my image simply by using that sizing box, and I can switch which is left and which is right using these icons. Let's keep going. The column block is next. Big fan of the column block because it was something that was difficult to do in the classic editor. So I'll type in COL, columns. Now by default, this gives me 2 columns right here. I'm going to paste some content into these real quickly. Now comes the slightly difficult part. I can transform this into something else by using the transform tool. So I can change this to standard text blocks if I want. To select this to work with this pane, and I need to do that in order to change the number of columns, it's a little bit difficult. Select one of your columns and then click just to the right. And once it selects both your columns, then you know you have the entire block selected, and now you can manipulate the number of columns over here on the pane. So I can choose 3 columns, 4 columns, and so on, using either this slider or this numeric right here. So we'll work with 4 columns. I'll paste content into these other 2. And that is working with columns. You can also, incidentally, with your cursor placed at the very top left-hand corner, I can go to this little pull-down here and add an inline image, which is an image that's going to stay inside that column. I'll select it, and now we can see how that works. I've got a logo here at the beginning of this column. Let's keep going. The buttons are next. I'll go to the Add Block and select Button. I'll skip the Max Buttons block and simply use buttons. Here is my button. I can add my text right here. The URL goes right here. So let's say I'll grab the main part of my URL from my location bar, put it in that way. So now the button has a link to my website. I can change the style of the button using the pane over here so that it can be an outline button or a squared button, and I can change the alignment right up here. That's how to work with buttons. Separators are simply horizontal rules. We've used these a lot. The reason they're used so much on websites is because they're a really good and easy way to let the end user know there's a separation between your content. Up over here, I can change it to a wider line or dots. And then over here in my toolbar, I can transform it into wide line and dots as well. Embed is next. Let's type in YouTube. No, that's not going to give it to us. Let's type embed. And here I have our YouTube embed. So I'll select that block. Here is where the URL to the YouTube video goes. So I'll quickly go to my cheat sheet again. I'll grab my YouTube video. Here we are. URL. I'm sorry, that's not it. That's it. There we are. Right click and copy. We'll go back to our page, and I put my URL in here. And there's our YouTube embed. A classic block to put in classic text. Go to Add Block, CLA. Here's our classic block, notice that the top toolbar is just like it was in the olden days with the classic editor, and I can put in some content this way. We'll use the second paragraph here. Click copy, go back to my page, and paste it in. Finally, a reusable block, a block that I tend to use a lot. We'll just choose one. We're going to go to the three dots in the upper toolbar here, select them, add to reusable blocks, and we can call this food label dates. So if this is content I use a lot, I can click save. And now when I go to add block, type in food, I have food label dates as a reusable block that goes right here as soon as I click it. So this block can now be easily and quickly pulled in. Let's go back to our PowerPoint and keep going. HTML blocks. Now let me caution you that you don't need to know HTML to work with WordPress. Having said that, it can be useful. One of the most useful ways is working with calendars. There are three ways to edit HTML. You can pull in an HTML block. You can pull in any other kind of block, and then using the three dots specific to the blocks, so the upper left-hand three block settings, you can choose the edit as HTML command, or the three dots on the right, the entire page, the workspace settings three dots. Near the publish button, you can choose code editor, and that will allow you to work with code. Now, I have a whole tutorial on my website on working with calendar code, and it's right here if you need it. This PowerPoint will be published on my website in a couple of hours. And here's the actual code we're going to put in. We're going to put it in using an HTML block. Generally, how this works, again, there's three steps. You first pull in this generic iframe code. This works for more than just calendars, by the way. This works for any iframe that you're working with. So you pull it in. This code is on my page as well. Essentially, you're looking for the begin and the end comments, and you're putting your calendar code between them. Here is the calendar code. This is a literal cut and paste from Google Calendar. So you put that in between these two. Then you do three things. The first less than tag, you change to a square bracket. The greater than tag, which ends this, you change to the right square bracket. And then finally, you lop off this ending closing iframe tag. So let's try all of that. I'm going to go to my page again. We'll go down here. We'll click the add block. We'll choose HTML, and we see custom HTML is our block. Oops. There we are. HTML is right here. I'm going to now go to my cheat sheet. I'm going to grab the first bit of code. And again, this is on my website. I'm going to copy it, go back, and paste it in. So this is my iframe code. And between begin and end, this is where we paste in our actual calendar code. This is what you get from the Google Calendar site. We'll go back to our cheat sheet. And again, I'm literally pulling this directly, well, not literally, I guess, but this is pulled directly from the Google Calendar site for a calendar. I'll paste that in. Oops. I'll paste that in. And now I need to do three things. This opening, beginning, excuse me just a second here. This opening, beginning, less than, I'm going to change to a square bracket. This closing, greater than, I'm going to also change to a square bracket. And then I'm going to simply lop off this closing iframe tag. And we'll update it. And that is how to work with an HTML block, as well as how to add a calendar. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. And I'm just going to bring this because they're so widely used. Tabby responsive tabs work just fine with the block editor. I know a lot of you out there use Tabby responsive tabs. You don't need an HTML block to use them. The shortcode just goes in there the same way it always did in Classic Editor. For each section, you put within square brackets the shortcode Tabby space title equal and the name of your tab in quotes. And at the end of the page, not at the end of each tab, but at the end of the entire page, you put Tabby ending in square brackets. Other shortcodes, expand, contract, collapse-o-matic, toggle, print me, there are a million others, also work well in the block editor mode. And with that all said, we'll quickly share our page one last time. And I put this in preview mode so we can see all the things that we've added. Here is our title block, our cover block, those three text blocks we have right here. Here's the text to media block. Here is the columns block, a button, separator, a YouTube embed, another bit of text, and then a calendar. And that, in a nutshell, is how to work with the new content blocks in WordPress.